Some men do not get stronger while life is easy. They get stronger after life has already taken something from them and made them stand back up anyway. You've probably seen a version of this man. He's somewhere in his 40s or 50s. He doesn't over explain himself anymore. He answers a question, then stops talking. Instead of filling every silence the way he used to, he's not colder. He just doesn't need you to understand him the way he did 10 years ago. And if you ask the people around him, most of them will tell you the same thing. He changed. What they usually get wrong is when. This is the psychology of men who become stronger later in life, and it isn't about luck, good genes, or an easier road. Most of these men will tell you the opposite happened. They went through more, not less. The years that looked like nothing from the outside were doing the actual work. Take a man like this, 49. He's up before the alarm now. Not that he sleeps badly, he just doesn't need the extra 10 minutes of noise to start his day anymore. 15 years ago, he was the guy answering work messages at midnight, phone lit up next to the bed, telling himself it made him reliable. He ran a small crew back then, 3 kids under 12, a mortgage he never talked about out loud. He said yes to almost everything, because somewhere along the way he'd started believing that being needed and being loved were the same thing. Nobody around him thought anything was wrong. He was functioning. He showed up. He paid for things. From the outside, that's usually enough for people to assume a man is fine. But being fine and being yourself are not the same thing, and the gap between them doesn't disappear just because nobody's asking about it. It sits somewhere in the body. It shows up as a tiredness that a full night's sleep doesn't fix, as a short temper over something that isn't actually the problem, as going through an entire weekend and not remembering a single part of it that felt like his own. For years, a man like this has been playing a part other people needed, steady, useful, unbothered, and whatever he actually is underneath that part has been waiting a long time for the performance to end. It isn't only him. A lot of men hit this same stretch in their 40s and 50s, spending a decade running a version of their life someone else handed them, telling themselves there'll be time later to build the real one. Another spends 15 years as the guy who never says no at work, the one everyone assumes can handle one more thing, until he realizes no one has asked what he actually wants in longer than he can remember. Different lives, same pattern underneath. A man quietly disappearing behind the role he's playing, while everyone around him assumes the role is who he actually is. Holding up a version of yourself that isn't quite true costs something, even when it looks like competence from the outside. A little more attention spent managing how he comes across, a little less left over for anything real. For a while, a man can run on it. He's busy enough, needed enough, that the cost doesn't register. Psychologically, this is what happens when a man spends years confusing his role with his identity. The cost adds up quietly, in the background, the way any debt does, until eventually something has to give. It isn't weakness, it's just that no one can perform a version of themselves forever without the real one demanding a turn. If you're past 40 right now, still tired in a way you can't fully explain, still saying yes to things you don't want to do, still waiting for some version of yourself to show up that hasn't yet, this isn't you falling behind. Most men who look solid today were exactly here at some point. The waiting isn't the opposite of the change, it's usually the part right before it. For the man in this story, the shift didn't arrive with a plan. It arrived in a hospital hallway, signing forms for his father, realizing the man he'd spent 3 decades trying to impress could no longer remember what year it was. He took a few months away from work after that. People assumed he was struggling. He was, but not in the way they thought. For the first time in a long time, nobody needed anything from him, and the silence that used to feel dangerous started to feel like relief. That's usually how it works. Not one dramatic scene, but a moment that makes the old way of running a life stop making sense. A diagnosis. A divorce that's been quietly happening for years before anyone says it out loud. A kid moving out and the house going quiet. Sometimes it isn't even one moment, just an ordinary Tuesday where he sits in the driveway an extra 10 minutes before going in, not ready to be needed again yet. Whatever it is, it removes the excuse he's been using to avoid the question underneath everything. Who am I when I'm not being useful to somebody? Not every man who reaches that question comes out stronger. Some come out harder instead, shorter with people, quicker to blame, convinced everyone owes them something for what they went through. You've probably met one of each: the uncle who got harder after his divorce and the one who got calmer. The difference isn't the amount of pain, it's whether he let it teach him anything or just waited for it to pass so he could go back to who he was before. The ones who actually change tend to look different in small, specific ways. He trains 3 mornings a week now, but not for how it looks. He wants to know what his body can still do. He calls his brother, the one he hadn't really spoken to in years outside of holidays, just to talk, no occasion attached. He sleeps with his phone in the other room now, something that would have felt irresponsible to him a few years ago. He says no to a dinner he doesn't want to go to. No long explanation anymore, just can't make it this time. His daughter, 22 now, tells her friends her father finally seems relaxed. She has no idea what that actually took, and he isn't in a hurry to explain it to her either. None of that is about becoming louder, it's closer to becoming harder to shake. He argues less, not because he's given up his opinions, but because he no longer needs a stranger's agreement to know what he thinks. He's stopped chasing approval, and the strange part is how much smaller that need turns out to have been all along once it's finally gone. Even his sense of humor changes, less performing for a room, more just enjoying the joke. That's what most people miss about men like this. They don't experience the earlier years as wasted, even the ones that looked stuck from the outside. Every year he spent being reliable to everyone except himself was still doing something. It just wasn't visible yet. He isn't stronger later in life because he failed early. He's stronger later because some parts of a man only get built after life stops letting him avoid what he's been carrying and who he's been carrying it for. He isn't trying to be impressive anymore. He's trying to become someone he can actually respect when the house is quiet and nobody else is around to see it. Which decade of your life are you only now starting to understand? If this one hit close, it might hit close for someone you know too. Send it to him. And if you want more of these, subscribe to The Mind Made Simple. We put out simple psychology videos like this every week.